Hello, my name is Kevin Hirsch, and in this podcast, we're going to be talking about sunflower variety development work under the diverse field crop cluster. And here to talk about it and the sunflower work is Katherine Stanley with the Manitoba Crop Alliance. First of all, Katherine, what facilities and what locations is all your work taking place in?
It's a great question, Kevin. So, the nature of our program and being unique in the Canadian context, it kind of takes across or works across several regions. So, we work with a breeder who is actually from Fargo, North Dakota, and we have been working with that breeder since the inception of the program. They do all the initial crossing and evaluation for just those agronomic and quality characteristics that you're looking for in Fargo. Then we have our Canadian core part of the breeding program. So we typically work at two locations in Manitoba, where those later preliminary lines we're testing, the advanced yield lines we're testing, just to make sure that they are meeting those requirements for our Canadian growers. And then, similar to other breeding programs, if your listeners are familiar, we also work with a winter contra season nursery. So our breeder and our sunflower seed makes the long journey to Chile every winter and gets to warm up a little bit from the prairie cold. And that just really helps us advance those lines. So instead of growing, one generation every year, we get to grow two generations. In Chile, they look for days to maturity. They look for, again, just those main quality characteristics, but we're really looking at that short season maturity when it's in the Canadian growing conditions.
So, Catherine, we should probably be clear. The work is specifically on confection type sunflower and not oilseed.
Correct. Yeah. We're working
And
primarily on confections.
and why is that? Is somebody else doing oilseed or confection appears to be where the most potential is or where the greatest need is?
I think what it was currently where the greatest need is, and when the program started in the 2010s, 2011, at that time, confections actually dominated the industry in Manitoba. So Manitoba grows over 90% of the sunflowers in Canada. And at the time, anywhere between 60 and 70% of those acres were in confection sunflowers, while the remainder was in oils. But as time went on, the genetic improvements for oil types were just larger, and there were more genetic improvements, including the development of herbicide tolerant hybrids. The market for confections is also challenging, and we can talk about that a little bit more. And so, where we are today is maybe about 20-30% confection acres and more oil type acres. So the investment from private industry in the oil hybrid development has just been, had a lot more investment from many more different companies, whereas the confection industry has remained relatively small. There are fewer companies investing in this area, all of which are in the United States. And what we found, or what the growers were finding, was that the hybrids that were being brought into Canada were really not meeting the environmental needs of our growing region, particularly on the maturity. And so at the time, before MCA was the National Sunflower Association of Canada, and the farmers who are part of that committee decided that they wanted to use our checkoff dollars to invest in a confection breeding program to support confection sunflower growers in the province.
Is confection, I imagine quality is probably really important. And is there a number of quality parameters you need to meet?
There are. So for those who maybe aren't familiar, confection sunflower, what you may be more familiar with snacking at a ball game or when you're fishing or around a fire. Whereas oil type typically go into bird food or into crush for oil. So you're not really looking at the seed. And so you can think when you're picking out that bag of sunflowers, it looks a certain way. And it's probably looked a certain way for your whole life that you can really remember eating sunflowers. And that's because the main hybrid that's been used for confection, like snack sunflower, is actually 30 years old. So, you can see, you think about, especially if farmers who are listening, all the varieties, whether they're wheat varieties or canola varieties, they're changing all the time. So 30 years, you would it's time for something new. But when we're looking at those quality characteristics, there's actually a few different things that you're looking for, and it is very different than a milled or a processed product because most of it is a little bit about the vanity. It's a little bit about how that looks. So what you're looking for when the shell's on, things that are important to the market are stripes. So that is whether the how many of those classic white stripes are there? Are there one stripes? Are there no stripes? Are they on the edge of the seed? Do they go down the middle of the seed? These are all very important things to the industry as well as into the market in general, depending on these large processors who their clients are. They like their seed to look a different way. The next thing that is important is the length of the seed, as well as what they call the shoulder width. So just that fattest part of a sunflower seed when you're looking at it. Very different regions of the world all eat sunflowers in different ways. And depending on how you're consuming your sunflower, you want it to have a different feeling in your mouth. And that's why like the structural characteristic of the seed is so important. And then finally, well, not finally, but as far as seed structure, you're looking at what you call nut meat percent. So that's when you actually crack open the shell. What's the seed that you're actually eating? How much to the ratio of the weight of the whole seed is edible product. So that ratio is important too. And it's important for two reasons. Obviously, as a consumer, you want to feel like you're getting a bang for your buck when you're spending all that time cracking open those seeds. But also, if any seed is an off type, and by that I mean visually maybe not appealing or smaller or not, it's not going to go into that bag. It gets dehulled for like the snack, for like salad bars and, the stuff you would see in baking or in your bread. And so you want to make sure the companies want to make sure you're still able to make profit from that seed. So making sure you have that high nut meat percent is really important.
So any variety development probably has to have those quality characteristics as sort of the baseline. It has to have this, and then we'll try to improve other things. So what are the breeding objectives that you're working towards?
So for our program, primarily being a commodity association, all of our funding comes directly from farmers. So we want to make sure we're breeding a product or a crop type that works in our farmers' fields. So a lot of our focus is on the agronomics and as well as building in herbicide tolerance. So we build into our program the express sun tolerant gene, which is the SU7 gene. It's a group 2 herbicide for express. Most confection sunflowers that have been historically available don't have any herbicide tolerance, and sunflowers are notoriously non-competitive with weeds and can be a really challenging crop to make sure you're managing your weeds in. So that's been a really important trait to include in the program. Then diseases are a huge challenge in sunflower. So our program, we work with downy mildew resistant and downy mildew resistance and rust resistance. And then there are no markers currently for sclerotinia resistance in sunflowers, but we work with the disease programs out of North Dakota State University, and they're continuously screening for different disease resistance traits that we would be bringing into our program as they become available. But for now, we take just the classic disease ratings in the field. We look for those hybrids that are showing maybe less sclerotinia head rot than other ones. So it's something that we can rate for in the field, but unfortunately we can't build into our breeding program at the moment. Other than that, we're looking for, especially for our short growing season in Canada, hybrids that will make it to the end of the season. We need those shorter growing degree days, making sure that a farmer can plant and harvest it before the ground freezes and the snow arrives. Early maturity, as well as good standability. Lodging is always a concern with sunflowers, particularly in that confection industry when you are wanting to make sure your quality is good.
Going back to the herbicide resistant trait, is group 2 resistance all that useful given how many weeds have developed group 2 resistance?
It's a very valid question and one that we've wrestled with a lot. I think right now we in Manitoba, and I know you're based in Saskatchewan, and I used to work in Saskatchewan, so I'm very familiar with the widespread challenges with group 2 resistance and having a heavy pea and lentil in your rotation. With sunflower, it is kind of the only herbicide tolerant gene that's available. There are not a lot of in-crop herbicides available for sunflower. And as a commodity association, the research that we support in other areas of what we do, as well as with our agronomy and extension teams, we just make sure that we're continuing to push the messaging of good integrated weed management strategies, making sure you are rotating your herbicide groups. I think unfortunately we're in a situation where we're seeing resistance to a lot of different herbicide groups, including Roundup. It doesn't mean that we haven't stopped using those tools right now, but we need to use them in a smarter way. And, we see sunflower as a valuable component of a crop rotation, but we need to make sure that, those other crops that you're following, what are you tank mixing with, that you're having responsible herbicide use practices. But it is a great question. And I think it does challenge the entire sunflower industry to look at the longevity of the herbicide packages that can be used in sunflower.
Will it be feasible or possible to actually develop different varieties for different climate zones, even within Manitoba or perhaps outside of Manitoba?
I think it would be, and it's definitely a journey to do. What we find right now is I guess scientifically, absolutely. You can, through breeding, can select for shorter growing degree days. As far as the market and the industry, it's become relatively small. And not to say that it's not important and that there isn't a need for confection varieties, but we're not seeing companies really create these expansive portfolios of hybrids that are available. So it is requiring people to be selective with the types of hybrids they're releasing, what areas that they're suitable for, and how they might work. So for now, for us, like we're finding we have good regional representation in Manitoba for sunflowers. We have been working with some of our counterparts in Saskatchewan that are interested in sunflower production, and we'll hopefully be trialing some of our registered hybrid in that area. But it's a great question, and I think with all crop development, you could get really specific if you wanted to. But as far as, and hybrid production is tricky, right? Because the cost of producing that seed is so expensive. So with a small amount of acres, how specific can you get? And that really is a challenge. So we're trying to make sure at least the Canadian region is covered. We've actually had some interest from some farmers in Quebec that are looking at sunflower production to understand maybe if the hybrids coming out of our program would work in their region better than what they're getting out of the States too. So we're going to be hopefully trialing some of that this year with them.
But hybrids are the root of the whole project. It just has that much of an advantage over open pollinated.
It does. And I think, that largely comes in with the seed requirements. And you need that consistency in the seed type and the seed size, with sunflower being, very attractive to so many pollinators and insects that there's just such opportunity for those off types to be created. And you're not going to hit those, like keep the markers that you're looking for on disease resistance. You'll start to lose some of those agronomic traits that you've built in. Very similar to what we're seeing in other hybrid production, and hybrids in sunflower have really dominated the industry on the oil side as well.
Are you close to a registered variety from the program?
Yeah, we are actually. We have two registered hybrids that we registered in 20. Ooh, I'm losing track of time now. 2024, I think. And one we've recently successfully licensed. So we have one hybrid that's been licensed to CHS, which is a sunflower company out of North Dakota. And if everything goes well, they did seed production last year, and seed should be in farmers' fields this summer in 2026. So we're really excited about that. Our farmers are really excited. It's been a long journey. It's amazing how long this all takes, but yeah, everyone's excited. So I think it'll be available on a smaller number of acres this year, and pending how that goes, hopefully we'll see it across a broader region in Manitoba.
So how long has it taken? How long has there been producer support for a sunflower breeding program to get to this point?
Since 2011. So a very long time. So it really started with MCA's current chief operating officers, Darcel Graham. She was the chair or executive director of the National Sunflower Association of Canada. and really kicked this off with farmers support. And there's been a lot of support, obviously, over the years. We've had funding through federal and provincial research calls, through clusters, and obviously the unwavering support of sunflower farmers in Manitoba. So it's a lot of pressure, and you want to have a great program and produce a product that farmers can use and be proud of. So we're really hopeful for the hybrid. It's going to be called MCA 359, to be out in the fields in 2026.
Katherine, anything that I should have asked that I didn't, or anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, no, I think everything you covered everything. It's been, yeah, a great program. We're excited to see some, you see the results every year, but it means something when a farmer can see it in their field. And that's why we did it. So that's why we're here.
Katherine Stanley, Manitoba Crop Alliance, thanks very much. I'm Kevin Hirsch. Thanks for watching and listening.